Welcome. Today we are talking about a family unit for kindergarten and why you should have one and how you can teach it. Let's dive in. So, why a family unit? Why should we teach family in kindergarten? Well, the first reason I love starting the year with a family unit and teaching about families in kindergarten is because it lets the students share about their families. And you really get to know them and their families right away from the beginning of the school year. The second reason is that it sets a foundation for respect and anti bias education. Third reason is that it's a great start to interdisciplinary studies. And the fourth reason is it sets a foundation for future social studies topics. So let's dive in talking about how students share about their families. So the way that I start a family unit is we definitely read lots of books, and I'll get into that next. But I also have out some of these worksheets that you can see here where the students just draw who lives in their house. And for some kids, they might actually have two houses, so they could draw two homes. They could do two responses, but it gets a little more inclusive to say who's in your house versus who's in your family, because that can get quite complicated with kids. They'll want to include their great aunts, uncles, cousins, like second cousins, third cousins, their third cousin's dog, right? They're very inclusive, which is great. But you want to know who lives with them in their house. And they could have more than one house. You could have more than one paper. We talked about that. But this idea is really helpful to get to know the kids, and they love drawing who's in their house, including the animals, and then sharing it with their friends, and they get to know, oh, this person lives with their grandparents, this student lives with two dads, this student lives with three sisters, I have a sister just like you, so you can start to make connections. So it's a great way for students to share about themselves and their home life and get to know each other and see about any connections they have. Like I said, I use a lot of books when teaching about families, and I make sure that the books are very inclusive. I want all of my students to have a visual representation in the books of their family. I want them to identify themselves in the book that we're reading. And as I said earlier, teaching about families really does set the foundation for inclusivity and anti bias education, because it sets the tone that everyone is a little different, and that's okay, right? We're talking very basic in kindergarten here, but there can be two moms, and that's okay. There can be two dads, there can be one dad. Maybe you don't have a dad, and that's okay, right? Every family is different, but every family loves each other, right? That's what we talk about. So, there are lots of differences, but what are the things they have in common? So we always come back to what are the things they have in common? And this really does start some great conversations about differences and inclusivity. The other reason that I like starting with the family unit is it's a great way to be interdisciplinary. So it is social studies unit. It's part of the social studies standards in my state, but it also is math and writing and reading. So we read lots of books, we do lots of writing about our families, and we even do math because we're counting the people or animals in our houses, right? So as you can see here, this is a graph I did with my students. The majority of them had 4 members in their family. Some had 5, some had 6, right? And so it's a great way to introduce graphing and counting. And finally, the fourth reason to do a family unit in kindergarten is that it really does set the foundation for future social studies units, because social studies is all about different communities, the school community, the country community, the state community, the world community, all about different communities. And the family is really the child's first community. And so by starting with social studies as a whole to learn about the thing they know the most about, and that is the closest to them with the with the family community, it then helps them make connections to the school community or the town community or the state or the country community, and they can make those connections based on their first community. If you liked all of these activities and things that I've talked about with teaching about the family, you might enjoy this freebie. You saw it in the first example with students responding who lives in their house. And there's a lot more like this, including the graph you saw that you can buy in my family unit product, but this page is yours for free if you want it inside of the blog. Comment below if you really enjoyed learning about families, if you teach about families with your students, and if you're excited about the freebie. Enjoy, and we'll see you in the next video.